Hi, that's me there on your screen. My name is Hugh. I'm a student at Bates College, and for the past year, I've worked on a small farm in Auburn, Maine. The farm is at the end of a dead-end road, about 15 minutes away from downtown. This type of place is new to me. I grew up in New York City, one of the busiest, loudest, and most developed places in the world. When I came to Maine in 2014, I could not have imagined that I would be spending my free time feeding pigs and cleaning up their crap. In New York, people prioritize what is big, new, and flashy above all else. Here in Auburn, things are a bit different. Today, however, Auburn faces an inflection point. For the past few years, a debate has been raging over the town's agricultural zone. Should Auburn maintain its current path, one that has ensured that woodlands and farmland are protected from the pressures of development and sprawl, or should it change the rules to try to encourage development in the way that so many other towns and cities across the country have already? In this film, I'll try to learn how the people of Auburn think about and value their land. I'll talk to people who want things to remain as they are, and those who advocate passionately for change. Through their stories, I think that everyone who watches can learn something about themselves, their communities, and the landscapes they live in. Let's go. Part 1. What is Auburn's agricultural zone? Towns and cities across the world use a tool called zoning to organize themselves. Basically, this means that a town will split its land into different sections, called zones, and each zone has specific rules about what can be built there. Residential zoning might look like this, while commercial zoning would look more like this. Auburn has zones just like everywhere else, but with one unique feature. In the early 1960s, Auburn's city government established an agricultural zone in order to drastically limit development and encourage agriculture and resource conservation. Today, over 20,000 acres, representing more than 40% of Auburn's total landmass, fall within that zone. The main points we need to know about the ag zone are that, 1, if you own land within the zone, you can only construct farm-related buildings, except if you want to build a house and you both own a lot larger than 10 acres and you make more than half of your household income from farming. Part 2. What does the ag zone mean to those who live there? Kathy Shaw has a very personal stake in this issue and has devoted her time and energy to fighting to protect the agricultural zone. She's farmed her land here in Auburn for about 2 decades now, and I've worked for her over the past year.
I moved to Maine in 1975 and have pretty much done farming or some sort of agriculturally based work my whole entire life. I bought the farm in 98 and have been out at the end of Soapers Mill Road since that time. I like the privacy. I like the quiet. I like living at the end of a dead-end road. I like the fact that I'm surrounded by 75 acres of my own fields and woods. It's quiet. You can see the stars at night. I don't have neighbors, so if I have unhappy animals or issues with big trucks coming and going with feed or grain, I'm not bothering anyone.
Gotcha.
It's just doing our own thing. For conservation purposes, for water and air quality, for the wild animals. This area of land provides habitat and the opportunity also for recreation. We have miles and miles of snowmobile trails and hiking trails. This is really the area that I would want to be living in. I prefer to not live close to urban areas. I like space around me. And if I was to choose to build on another piece of property that I own, I can easily satisfy the 50% income requirement because that's what I do. This is what I do.
Travis Marshall moved to Auburn 5 years ago from Maryland with his wife and 2 children.
Originally from Aberdeen, Maryland.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
about 500 miles south of here, a little warmer.
Yeah.
We had been looking to move. Maryland was just getting a little crowded and fast for us, and we kind of knew we wanted to get into possibly doing a small farm. Most of the first couple years has been spent clearing land. We've run a lot of pigs and chickens to start to get the gardens back. It's certainly been a pretty welcoming place, a lot slower pace. It's not crowded. There's good clean water everywhere. It's one of the few places I think left where you can actually have a decent sized piece of property and still not be in the middle of nowhere and have to commute. You know, anybody who doesn't see trying to localize our food systems more is certainly missing the big picture. You know, they're running out of water out west. Every day is more expensive to transport goods. So, you know, we should have started 30, 40 years ago. But the economics are difficult because big agriculture is extremely efficient in what they do. It's, you know, a huge value, but, you know, I think its value is when people are actually working the land and turning it into productivities. And so without people, you know, coming and working it profitably, you know, it's going to be difficult to keep it like that as we can sort of see happening now.
Part 3. The future. Mayor Jason Levesque is fighting to change Auburn's agricultural zoning laws. He is currently trying to push a new ordinance through the city council that would substantially reduce the minimum requirements to build a house in the ag zone.
Auburn is really an unique space. When I look at the asset mix of the city of Auburn, and then I really start looking at the reality on the ground, I put together a vision of Auburn being really Maine's urban playground. When you're an urban playground, you get to enjoy everything that one would want within one city limit. And this is the natural next step. We're the only city in Maine with a ski mountain. We're the only city in Maine with 4 golf courses. We're the only city in Maine with 2 lakes within its city limits. We could be the only city in Maine, too, that's self-sufficient with regards to agriculture. And we should be producing food. That's what I envision. I envision entrepreneurial startup farms, small scale, 5, 10 acres, 12 acres, right around that mix. This has been a proven model throughout the Northeast, actually, utilizing abundant sun, good soils, and proximity and our other assets in order to produce high yield, high revenue producing crops.
Under the proposed changes, anyone who currently owns a lot between 3 and 10 acres in size, and who either makes $1,000 from agriculture or invests $1,000 into future agricultural production, can build a home.
So a lot between 3 and 10 acres that's been in existence before January 1st of 2018 can have a farm dwelling. There's 87 of those lots in the entire city. There's 87 of those lots out of 20,000 acres. It makes up less than 1% of our total acreage. We're righting an injustice. Okay. Now, increase in utilities, it's negligible to non-existent, and frankly, the opposite. If they want city water and city sewer, it's actually not the city. It's Auburn Water and Auburn Sewer Departments. You have to, by their policy, pay to connect to water and sewer. You have to have existing road frontage. So that means we're already maintaining the roads. So fire, EMS. If you look at our response rates, all of our police officers, first of all, have beats. They already cover these areas. So there's no additional beats needed. Most of our response rates are in our downtown urban area. That's a different topic, okay? Not in our agricultural zone. Most of these people will call 911 the day they die, and that's it, okay, to get hauled away. So that's really the usage.
Gotcha. Mayor Levesque is confident that more development in the ag zone would not stretch the city government's resources too thin. Others have doubts, like Doug Green, who used to work as a city planner in Auburn.
One of the things that I learned a lot about in my earlier days of learning about farm conservation is the conflict that happens when you have suburban type people moving out into farmland, and you get the dogs, you get the kids, and you get traffic, and there's impacts that are negative to farming. So while I'm a big believer in the choice for people to live where they want to live, I think it's helpful to have municipal governments be supportive of encouraging development in our existing areas to make the cost of services less. It's just generally considered more expensive to allow development out in rural areas, that you have to increase bus service, emergency services, and water and utilities out in those areas. And there are a lot of small lots out there that have suffered because they couldn't do anything, but if they were allowed to be grandfathered as you could build on it, I think that would solve a lot of people's concerns. That's my understanding. What's more concerning to me is the impact of house every 200, 250 feet. That causes more traffic. I've seen that change the nature of rural areas, and no one's wanting to build a subdivision with 3-acre lots on it. And so you're not going to get one road for 10 houses, you're going to get 10 houses over a mile, and that has a big impact on traffic, the need for better roads out in those areas. You're going to get more rural constituents who expect better services out there. I just think that's problematic.
So, what conclusions should we draw from Auburn and its ag zone? It's hard to decide who is right. In some sense, I think everyone is right to a degree. Auburn is fortunate to still have as much undeveloped land as it does. Yes, there are some reforms that would make life a lot easier for some residents and would probably promote more farming. But yes, loosening restrictions risks throwing a wrench into a system that has succeeded in keeping much of Auburn from becoming sprawl, even if it has some flaws. Should Auburn take this step? Is it a slippery slope? Mayor Levesque summed up the problem at hand best.
It's a low barrier of entry. It's also really good because it's a low barrier of entry. Some people argue that it's bad because it's a low barrier of entry, depending on how you feel about human nature. Do you inherently think that people are trying to game a system, or do you inherently think that people are good, based upon perspective?
He is asking that the people of Auburn who are concerned about loosening restrictions trust him and trust others who want to build in the ag zone. Should they?
So in a way, it could be a slippery slope, that we're headed towards. And I know there's obviously people who have an interest to develop the land and have tax revenue coming off of it. So I guess, you've got two sides, kind of tooth and nail, going at each other on what their intentions are. And I guess at the end of the day, the truth is hopefully somewhere in the middle.
We don't place enough value on what we have. Once we start carving those areas up, they're gone. We don't create more land, and it's vanishing. I really don't want this area of Auburn to become another Cumberland or North Yarmouth, where they may still have a significant amount of wooded areas, but their farms are disappearing because they can't afford to stay.
The stakes for the future of this community are high. The future of the landscape, the space in which each resident of Auburn lives their lives and raises their children. I don't know that there's a correct way to use the land here. I'm really only a visitor. The decision is not mine to make. What I will say, though, is that each and every citizen of Auburn has the opportunity to make their voice heard as this debate continues to play out.
This area of land that we have here in Auburn is a quiet land. Can't speak for itself.
No matter what they think about the agricultural zone, the people of Auburn need to speak up for their land. Many of them have already. Don't leave this decision in the hands of the few people paying attention. Don't think you're off the hook if you don't live in Auburn, though. This debate is not unique. It's universal. Whether you live in New York or anywhere else in the country, the landscapes we spend our lives in are not accidental, nor are they stagnant. People with power design them to look the way they do, and they continue to change to fit the needs of those who have that power. What Auburn has to teach the rest of us, however, is that we all have power. The debate in Auburn is dominated by those who show up and pay attention. They are the ones who get to play a role in the decision-making process. So read your local newspaper. Go to your city council meetings. Speak when you have the chance. Play a role in shaping the world we all live in.